Hello, everyone. I'm Vince Mickens with a very unique edition of All Things Aviation and Aerospace. As a rule, for those of you who know me, I generally geek out about anything that has to do with aviation and aerospace. But this show I'm really excited about beyond words. I'd like to think that everyone watching and listening has been to an air show and watched, amazing, often breathtaking maneuvers of aerobatic pilots. And what makes this particularly fun is that you seldom hear about what it's like and what it takes to be an aerobatic performer. So one of the things we are going to do today is really talk about that and talk about performing aerobatics and the careers of three amazing people. And also a couple of them are air racers. And we might even slip in a little skydiving in there somewhere. So, the closest we usually get to talking about aerobatic flying outside of military Top Gun type of stuff, the Air Force Thunderbirds, Blue Angels, and Canadian Snowbirds, is it's really something that we don't often talk about in terms of another opportunity. And I've already been warned that you're not going to get rich being an aerobatics pilot, but boy, these guys fly like every other day, if not every day. So to me, that's enough in itself to be a lot of fun and offer a lot for those of you who are looking for something maybe a little different than say being an airline pilot or a corporate pilot, cargo pilot, or say a medevac pilot. So very excited again, as I said, and really looking forward to things. That makes for a perfect segue to what I consider an incredible guest lineup. And just to show you how the stars can be aligned for aviators, the live YouTube link that we're on right now actually has the word ACE in capital letters as part of that link. So when I saw that, I thought, okay, that even YouTube is trying to connect with us on the aviation world, in the aviation world. Now, if that's not a sign of aviation destiny, I really don't know what is. First, I'd like you to meet six-time recipient of the First Lady of Aerobatics Betty Skelton Award, a six-time member of the U.S. National Aerobatic Team, and a three-time U.S. National Aerobatic Champion, Patty Wagstaff. Patty, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vince. It's great to be here.
It's an honor to have you here. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And also to meet aerobatic performer, air show racer, or air racer, seasoned skydiver, which is why I was bringing it up. And I have to say this at least one time, Dr. Vicky Benzing. Vicky Benzing has her Ph.D. in chemistry from the University of California, Berkeley. Vicky, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's great to have you here. And I guess you could say semi-new aerobatic performing, air racing, although I need to qualify that considering how much he has accomplished in the last decade. First as a rookie in 2014, where he placed fourth in his category in the U.S. National Aerobatic Championships. I almost said aerobic. He placed more than once in the National Championship air races in Reno. And he made his air show debut in 2017 at Miramar Air Show in San Diego. Which we were just talking about, the Miramar Air Show, which I understand from Vicki has been canceled, which is sad to hear. It's a great show. Anthony Oshinuga, welcome.
Hey, Vince. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm excited.
It's a pleasure. And I hope I pronounced your name correct.
Oshinuga, perfect. You did it right.
Good. Hey, so let's dive right into this and talk first about a little bit about what it's like in terms of being an aerobatic performer at an air show and things like that. I got a lot of ground to cover and obviously want to talk about you guys' background. But I'd first like to start off, and Patty, I'll start with you and ask you a little bit about what all goes into getting involved in doing something like you've done for a career.
Well, it's never simple, and everybody has a different way of going about it, and everybody has a different path and how they start. But what we all had to start learning to fly first, and you just don't know where aviation is going to take you. I had no idea what I was going to be doing. And if somebody had said, oh yeah, you're going to be an air show pilot, I would have said, okay, that's great. That's cool. I wouldn't have been surprised, but I didn't know that when I started. My sister's an airline pilot and she knew exactly what she wanted to do. And she headed for the airlines, and I just wanted to fly and didn't really have a plan. And just considered myself lucky to be able to do that. So you just don't know where things are going to lead. And I think you'd find a lot of airshow pilots probably are like that. One thing led to another.
Did you kind of stumble into it then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it was in the back of my mind that I wanted to do aerobatics when I started flying, but I went to an air show and I said, that's it. This is what I want to do. And I was getting my ratings and so on and so forth. And it just looked like, this is, I love the way that people are interacting, the performers are interacting. I love the flying. And so I decided that I'd sort of take that path toward competition and air shows. But it's one of those things. I think most air show performers will tell you, they see it and say, that's it, that's what I have to do. But it's not everybody feels that way in aviation. It's a lot of people think we're a little out there and
Really?
yeah, don't you think? And
I guess because I think what you do is pretty cool. I think
something
rolling an airplane multiple times a second and all of that is kind of
Yeah.
interesting, but
So
I think it's pretty
something
exciting.
you're sort of, and the word passion's a little overused. Either something you look at and say, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's for me. Or you're like, oh, that's somebody else doing that, that I'm going to be a spectator or I'm going to be a performer. And I knew I wanted to be a performer when I saw it.
How old were you when that happened? When you saw the air
In
show
my
and
early
said, this is what I
30s.
want to do?
Yeah, early 30s. And I wasn't, 16. I wasn't that young. So I bought an aerobatic plane and started practicing and decided I'd go to a contest. And then somebody asked me to fly a local air show. So I did that first. And that's usually how it happens for most of us. You buy an aerobatic plane, meet the aerobatic pilots around you, and then they encourage you to maybe fly a show or fly a contest. And I think that's how a lot of us start, not knowing exactly where it's going to lead.
So when did you start flying? When did you first take your first lesson?
I got my license in 1980. So I started flying around in 79, but I'd been around it, when growing up.
Yeah. So you were very familiar with it. I thought I read something that you would sit in the cockpit with your dad and.
Yeah, my dad would let me fly when I was a kid.
And was that did I see that right? A DC-6?
Yeah.
Wow.
DC-6 and 7s in Japan. Yeah.
Yeah.
And later on, DC-8s and 727s and 747s.
Yeah. Vicki, how about you? What's your perspective on what you guys do and what the life of doing aerobatics?
I'm sorry, I might have talked over you. Could you say that again, Vincent?
Oh, no, that's okay. I was giving you an opportunity I was asking the same question. In terms of the life of an air show aerobatics performer, tell us your perspective about that.
Me. You're talking to me?
Yes, Vicki.
Well, I started in much the same way as Patty. I learned to fly in my early 20s, and I learned to fly in 1982, Patty. And
Really?
yeah, but I was on a different path because I was working on my PhD, and so even though I learned to fly, my primary instructor taught me to do loops and rolls, and I loved aerobatics. And then I took a 10-hour course with Amelia Reed, but I really didn't have the money to pursue it, and I followed my career path. But at the same time, flying was a passion for me that just, I had to fly. So I've flown since I learned to fly, and it wasn't until later that I went for a ride with Wayne Handley that sort of rekindled the aerobatics passion. And I think a month later it was an expensive ride. I went out and bought an extra because at that point in my career I could afford that. And then I started doing contests, and then Wayne invited me to do an air show at a winery, and we got paid with a case of wine. that was kind of that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the aerobatic competition was fun, but the air shows were really fun.
Yeah, much more fun.
The amount of creativity that you could have with your flying, I thought that was really the fun part about air shows to me. So, and also, I guess maybe there's a little bit of a show off in all of us. We want to not so much show off our skills, but just show off how much we love flying to everybody else. And so yeah, that's what's really attractive about the air shows, and kind of why I went that direction.
Okay, before I go to Anthony, so guys, help me out a little bit. Patty, you kind of referred to it as you guys are kind of crazy with what you do.
No, other people might think we are. I don't
people think you're crazy. Okay,
yeah, we don't.
I correct myself.
Airshow people are pretty grounded, actually. I mean, you have to be.
Yeah. Well, and you're actually pretty technical and safety conscious too.
Oh,
So
totally. Yeah.
One of the first things go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like Vicki said about showing off aviation to people is a big part of it. Is, we're exposing people to aviation. Air shows are, to me, really important for that reason. That so many people learn to fly because they've seen an air show, and that's why I got into air shows, because I went to an air show, and so many people get their start by going to an air show. Kids and anybody that's been in air shows for even a few years hears that story from people. I saw you fly, and 10 years ago, and now I'm a F-16 pilot, kind of thing. So yeah. We love to share it.
Oh yeah.
Anthony, how about you? What got you started? And you've kind of accelerated pretty quickly, pun intended, over the last decade.
Yeah, I think that the acceleration portion is just being surrounded by, folks like Vicki and Patty and the Mike Gillians, and getting, mentorship to make sure that I'm staying the course, right? But I mean, my story started when I was like 2 years old. My mom and dad, they're from Nigeria, so they moved to America. I was born in Austin, Texas, and no one in my family are pilots. My dad happened to have a friend who was a pilot, and back in the late 80s, there was no perimeter fencing at the airport. And so he told my father, drive on to the airport, park your car on the approach end of the runway and sit there. And I remember being 2 years old, watching these airplanes fly right over the car and landing. And I remember turning around, holding my dad's shoulders, looking out the rear window of the car, watching these planes kind of struggling to land. And I was 2, and I remember that. And I remember that pretty much what kind of propelled me. But we grew up with no money. So I couldn't really obtain my license until kind of recently, when I was graduating college, going through college. I found an instructor at a local airport, and then taught me how to fly and whatnot. And then during that time, there was another guy who did aerobatics, and he invited me out for like a flight. I had no expectations of what to expect, and he rolled the airplane. I remember when he rolled the airplane, I'm like, holy smokes, you can do this legally? He said, yeah, certainly. I'm like, okay, well, sign me up. And I've never looked back ever since then. And to add on what Patty and Vicki said, air shows, at first I wasn't really interested in air shows, but just as I grew in my career, I kind of fell into it, and I love it. I mean, because for me, it's inspiring the youth, and it's to show them kind of like what we do and what aviation can do for you. And I feel like I'm in a lucky place right now, and I want to continue to grow in this space.
So let me go back a little bit. You when you were in school, I believe you majored in mechanical engineering, right?
Correct.
Any plans with that degree, or was that you were just finishing up school?
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. My parents are awesome. So they really kind of beat in my head academics was important. Like my brothers and sisters all are college degree, like doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. And so I made a promise with my father. I said, I'll get my degree, but you have to let me fly. So
you were the wild card.
I was definitely the wild card. Nobody in my family flew. So I made an agreement with my father. So I got the degree, and now I'm flying. But with this COVID thing, I'm fortunate enough to be able to use that degree to work during this COVID situation until we can get back and fly like we were doing in the previous year.
So your dad got his wish.
He did. And so did I.
Yeah, no, that's really, I bring it up because I think it's important for aspiring young aviators to hear that, you know, the path's not always what you think it's going to be, and different opportunities come about because of different exposure to different things. So and along those lines, in terms of the education thing, I'm coming back to you, Vicki, because I you know, as I started out the show calling you Dr. Benzing, but you have a PhD in chemistry. Tell us about how that came about and how you go from that to, you know, now basically flying and skydiving.
Not sure there's a connection, but I loved math and science since I was a little kid, and my high school offered 2 years of chemistry, so I took 2 years of chemistry in high school, and I fell in love with chemistry. So that's how I ended up in chemistry, and it just seemed like the kinds of jobs that I might get with a BS degree would be sort of lab technician type of jobs, and so and you know, frankly, at 22, when you graduate, you're not quite ready to go out in the workforce. So going to grad school was really pretty good, because that's when I learned to fly, was in grad school, and you have a fair amount of time. So I learned to skydive first. One of my buddies came down to my lab and said, "Hey, let's go skydiving," and I'm like, "Really?" So we went, and I fell in love with it, and then I was around the planes all the time, and I just had to learn to fly. And
So you learned to fly after skydiving.
yeah. So the rest is sort of history there.
First, you learned how to jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
Yep.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier before we started that you've had over 1,300 jumps, and you said at 1,000 jumps you can actually get a.
Oh yeah, well, you know, I actually hit my 1,000 jump in '97, but I finally applied for my 1,000 jump wings from USPA. And here we go.
Nice.
That is beautiful.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, that's. So, and I'll put this out to all three of you. Tell us what it's like when you're preparing for a show. You go somewhere that you're going to be performing in an air show. What do you do?
Well, it's kind of a full-time thing. You know, I tell people it doesn't matter if you fly one show, 5 shows, or 25 shows a year, you still have to be in shape for it. You still have to have the same G tolerance, positive and negative Gs. You still have to have all your paperwork. You still have to have your second-class medical. You have, you know, we line up the shows a year in advance a lot of times. So it's even during COVID last year in 2020, I ended up with one little show, and we all joked to the promoter, you know, we got to this little show, we were flying over a lake, and the performer said, "How much did you have to pay to fly this show?" You know, because we were all so desperate to fly something, you know. And so, but even then, I didn't know, you know, a lot of the shows didn't cancel till later, so I still had to practice. I still had to have all my paperwork. I still had to get everything ready and do the same thing that I would do whether I had 20 shows or not. So it's kind of a funny thing that
So you kept a routine.
Yeah, you really have to if you're going to be flying any shows. You know, it's not a hobby necessarily where, you know, and I really try and press that on new performers. This isn't something you can just do part-time, not at our level that we're all at. You can do it, you know, you can do it part-time when you're not at a you know, higher level with a lower limit, you know, lower surface level type card. But if you're going to do low level air shows in front of big groups of people, it's a full-time gig, even if you have, a lot of us have other jobs too, but it's a full-time thing, and it's not a hobby. So yeah, you have to stay.
You have to be really committed, and and part of that is a big safety factor.
Oh yeah, it's all of the above. Yeah, it's 100% effort. It's not easy, you know, but we love it, so it's what we do.
Yeah. Anthony, you've been doing it now for several years. What continues to drive you, and what do you continue to want to do in terms of your performing? And also, if you want to, you can talk a little bit about that you still compete, and you still air race.
Yeah, so I do still compete. So I'm flying in the advanced category here at the USA National Aerobatic Championships. Plan on attending here in September this year. We're finally back open, and last year, of course, it was canceled. So I really enjoy competition aerobatics because it kind of keeps me really sharp, right?
Right.
Even though airshow performance still takes quite a bit of effort, but I guess, and Patty and Vicky can correct me if I'm wrong, the lines don't have to be as sharp, right? So, because when you fly in competition aerobatics, you're getting judged by a panel of judges. And if you're not doing a vertical line, and if it's not vertical, you're getting penalized. Where air shows, you can kind of play around and show off and do a bunch of things that you can't really do in competition aerobatics. But I really enjoy competition aerobatics because it keeps me true. It keeps me sharp. It keeps me pretty much on top of things. Air racing is another thing, which is it's different from competition aerobatics, but it's also competitive. You have to be on your game because it's almost like formation flying, but not kind of in a sense. Yeah, and you're flying close to the ground, 200 miles per hour. Things move pretty quickly. I really enjoy that too, and that's something I really enjoyed. I just kind of fell into that. I got invited to come and race, and just enjoy that. Air show flying is something I again, like I have to say, I kind of fell into this arena as well. I really enjoy it because it allows me to express my creativity in the sky, and then also inspire the youth on the ground. Because I really like to inspire kids, right? When they see a pilot like us and say, I want to do that too because of what I just saw, and that makes me feel really good inside. But to Patty's point, air show flying is a different beast because you can't come in there. You cannot come in there less basic or not on your A game. You have to prepare months in advance. At least I think that's what we all do. Excuse me, that's what we all do to get ready for these shows because it's a different platform, different playing field.
Yeah. Patty, you are legendary in aviation as a aerobatics pilot, and you've broken a lot of barriers in doing that. From a woman's perspective, what's your take on it in terms of the challenges you faced? And we have to admit, it still primarily has been a guy's world in terms of most flying, but particularly that kind of flying.
Well, in competition, it was one thing because I set out to win the national championship because a woman hadn't won yet. And when I started competing, I said, I noticed that there've been some women that have been close and they were very good. And I said, I wonder why a woman hasn't won. And some of the people said, they'll never let a woman win. And even though it's not segregated, in gender or anything, but they'll never let a woman win, and women aren't aggressive enough, and and stuff like that. So so that was my goal there. In air shows, there have always been women since the beginning.
Right.
Women in shows but there are not.
But they've always been a minority.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're still in the minority. But what I found with air shows is that the women in air shows are very tight, and we're pretty unified, and we all get along really well, and we make it a point to stay really pretty close and be a really good support system for each other. In fact, I do a kind of a Zoom call once a month with a few women, and Vicki, we got to get you on this, and a few air show people that and just girls, girls call kind of thing, and we get together and just talk about stuff, and it's fun. But so I think we all help each other a lot, and I'd love to see more women in it. But it's a hard thing to get into for anybody, and of course, there's more men in aviation in general, so it sort of goes along with the trend of aviation in general, I think.
Although we're trying to change that, right?
Of course.
Yeah, very much so. Vicki, we were talking about that earlier from your perspective too, and you featured your steerman was featured in a documentary, Mercury 13. which was a really cool documentary, but it was also an interesting one because it talked about women wanting to be astronauts and the challenges they faced back then of even getting considered for the program, or actually not even being able to be considered. But how about your take in terms of women doing air show aerobatics, et cetera?
Well, I agree with Patty. There are quite a few women. I mean, obviously, as a percentage, it's much smaller. I think when I learned to fly, and I'm sure when Patty learned to fly, you rarely heard a woman's voice on the radio. And Patty, I think it's remarkable that 2 women in your family are pilots. That's really amazing, because there really are so few female pilots. I think it's really important to have role models in every aspect.
Absolutely.
And that includes for young women to see female pilots and female airshow performers. And Patty has been a huge role model. I mean, even for me, right? She's been hugely supportive of women in aviation and in the airshow community and in general. And I think that's very positive because women aren't always, I hate to say this, women aren't always nice to women. And it's great, great to see that.
But in air shows, we definitely have a really good group, I think, and role models. So Vicki, and back at you, because Vicki flies this 450 Stearman and does this really badass routine in the big multi airplane that usually you see like an ag pilot in. And I'll be at Oshkosh watching her. And I'm like, yeah, that's my girl. And I hear people going, look at that guy. And I just love it when she gets out of the plane. They're like, that's not a guy.
when her hair drops down out of that.
Yes. This last year in 2020, like you, Patty, I had one air show. It was on leap day in February. And in the whole rest of the year, mostly I gave rides and I'd do some aerobatics and stuff. And then I started training earlier this year because I have, the air shows are starting up in June. And oh my God, I forgot how hard it is to fly that airplane.
So hard to get your G tolerance back. Exactly. I think you have to have inertia and keep with it. And once you lose that inertia, it's pretty.
It's very physical.
Very
physical. So flying the monoplane and all that's the G tolerance is what's so hard to keep up with, the plus and minus 10 or whatever it is.
Oh, totally.
But in the Stearman, it's not so much the G tolerance, it's just the physical strength it takes to hold the stick against the stop out here away from you during the length of time it takes for that airplane to roll.
Wow. Yeah, and you must be just beat when you land after horsing that giant thing around.
Yeah.
People don't understand. Like, we get people at the school, but most people don't understand how physical it's going to be when they come to take aerobatic lessons. And even, just the very basic stuff, we start with upset training and then basic loops, roll, spin type stuff. And there you see them just sitting there after a flight. And, I give them some chocolate and a ginger ale. And I'm like, you're going to sleep really well tonight, I promise. And they're like, I had no idea. What you do is so physical. And we had a guy recently who was a big flight simmer and flown flight sim his whole life, and he thought it was going to be easy because he knew how to do all the maneuvers, and he was wiped out physically from it. He goes, I had no idea. It's so visceral and physical, and so we work hard.
Yeah, it's totally physical.
So what do you guys do to physically stay in shape for such a rigorous type of flying?
The best thing is to fly a lot, but I mean, I work out too.
I started weight training, and it didn't really prepare me for flying the Stearman.
Really?
It helped, though, don't you think it helped? It has to help a bit. I know, like in the winter, when I'm off season, I'll do more arm weights and all that. And in the summer, I don't really need to.
It's funny. It's funny for me. I don't know. This would be interesting to talk about too. It's like for me in the winter, Patty, I do more running, but in the summer, spring season, I do more weight training because I feel like if I do a lot of running, it's harder for me to and not stay conscious, but to keep the blood in my head, because
Yeah,
the
they say
blood wants to.
running's really bad for G tolerance or a lot of aerobics. Yeah.
Yeah, so I try to do
Yeah.
that in the winter, more of that in the winter, and then in the spring and summer months, it's just more gaining muscle in the
Right.
areas that I need it.
But I think Patty's right. It's the practicing, learning when to crunch down before you pull, and that just has to become second nature, because otherwise.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about some of the things you have to do to be a good aerobatics performer, if let's say some of our viewers are currently in college, they're at an aeronautical school, university, and they're studying something related to aviation, or they're going through their flight training. They may be planning on being an airline pilot or maybe a corporate pilot, etc. And now they're listening to you guys and they're going, "Oh, never thought about being an air show pilot, air show performer." We were talking about that in the sense that you guys, I think the impression is that it's more lucrative than it actually is. So what would you say to our viewers that may think, oh, this might be a direction I like to go. It sounds great to be able to do this, even with all of the things, Patty and Vicki, and Anthony, that you've talked about in terms of the prep and the physical challenges with it, and then all the things you do to stay safe as a performer.
I think you should plan on having another job, like maybe flying for the airlines or instructing, or as you start to build your career in aerobatics. And if you want to just do aerobatics, then you're going to have to go out and find a sponsor. But there truly are only a few people in our industry who that's what their livelihood is through sponsorship in air
And
show.
multiple sponsorships at that, right?
A lot of our community are airline pilots or flight instructors. I think most people have some other means of support.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Anthony.
I was just going to chime in and just say I would agree with Vicki. I mean, for me, being just a newbie, I guess, starting out in my career, I think what has helped me tremendously is just having multiple streams of income, right? So, being an engineer and bringing in some of that money, also sponsorships has been very, very helpful, because I think without the sponsors, for me, it's virtually impossible, because the expense is so high, and I love to fly all the time. So, that's what has helped me out. So I think it's just the multiple streams of income and sponsors.
Yeah, Patty, you've been doing this for a long time. You also you instruct. You mentioned earlier you do upset training. I know you've done things like teach pilots over in the Kenya Wildlife Service and things like that. So share with us your take on how you keep the income rolling and still be able to fly all the time and do these shows.
You need multiple sources of income, like Anthony said. It's not, you need I've been very, very lucky over the years with sponsors, and looking for business opportunities along the way. And having a school, a lot of us have do flight instruction too. Air show people are very resourceful, and I asked a few people last year, I'm like, are you going crazy not flying shows? What are you doing? How and
right.
People were amazing what they were doing. I mean, there was Rob Holland, I saw he's playing in a band, and something like that. And I know Goulian set up a new business, and we're very resourceful people. That's part of being an air show pilot. So people find ways to do it, find ways to pay it, but it's not a place to, I mean, you might be able to make some money without a sponsor, and you get to the point where you've spent 10 years getting good enough to charge enough, and then you have your engine blow up mid-season, and there goes your profit. There's it's you're definitely not going to get rich doing this, but you do have to have multiple multiple resources and ways to do it. And if you start with a lot of money, it's a good way to lose a lot of money. So, it's the old,
Okay.
how'd you get to be a millionaire? Well, I started with 6 and went down to 1 million. In my case, much less.
That if that you do make a name for yourself by being in the airshow community, and that gives you other opportunities for income streams.
Absolutely. It does, yeah.
Or,
and then the competition gives you the name for air shows too. So
right,
it's sort of connected.
And the skills. I think.
Vicki, how did California Aeronautical University become a sponsor and get involved with you? Besides the fact that you have a PhD in chemistry.
Yeah, it's sort of funny. One of the air show, I guess he's an air boss at one of the air shows. The CEO of the California Aeronautical University is a close friend of his, and so I had worked with him at an air show, and he said, and he knew that I had sponsorships, and they were looking to sponsor somebody, and so he sent him over to talk to me about, what sponsorships are like and what you should expect and stuff. And I talked to him this was at ICAS, and never expecting him to sponsor me, just kind of informing him about how it all worked. And then I got a call a month or two later, like, well, we want to sponsor you. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Okay. That's great. So I think it's other product sponsors. Maybe you can go, like, especially at Oshkosh, they all have booths and stuff. You can go meet them and solicit sponsorships. But to get the other sponsors, at least in my experience, it's really been through relationships.
Yes,
you really can't just go out and ask for sponsors. It comes via relationships with other parties, I'd say.
That's so true. I remember early on sending out all these packages, and before PowerPoints too, I'd send out a package with media that I'd gotten, and my bio and pictures, and these very expensive stuff. I mean, you're mailing all the 75 of these things out, and you'd get once in a while you'd get somebody, but it was the people who I'd met at an event like Oshkosh or Air Show, and that left the door open a crack that I could get my foot in and then go pitch them and so on. But I didn't get any cold calling type, nothing solid from that. What about you, Anthony? Same kind of thing?
Yeah, pretty much. So I 100% agree. It's all about relationships. I think the sponsorships that I've garnered so far is just being friends and just kind of having an organic friendship and building from that, and then eventually things happen. I think with Epic Fuels, one of my first sponsors back in 2014, I picked up the phone and I just told the guy my story. And then he was so captivated with the story, we started to kind of just keep in touch over the years, and then he finally sponsored me. So I think to Vicky's point and your point, Patty, I think it's all about relationships and just building those relationships. Because at the end of the day, for I think we're just all human beings, and so we can just connect on the human level. That means way more than just, hey, here's some dollars and just put your, put the logo on the airplane or put on a flight suit and go fly. I think for us, we understand that it's deeper, it means more, and it goes farther.
Yeah, that's great. And I like the term organic that you use. That's because that's really the way it works.
Yeah. Well, you guys talked about the one of the most challenging aspects. What's one of the most exciting things that happens with you when you're performing, when you're up there in the air, or what aspect of it is just a thrill beyond just the flying? We know you all love to fly, so that's kind of a given, but in terms of performing in front of a live audience at these air shows.
Maybe I should start because I'm the newbie, but I think, what just, it's, for me, it's amazing is, when you're holding, like when I was holding at Miramar, I'm looking down and there's thousands of people down there, look like little tiny ants, and you can see them. And then the air boss clears you into the box. Like, Anthony, the box is yours. That right there, for me, it's everything. Because then I'm able to jump in there, I'm able to dive in there and just express my artistic flying to the world. So for me, that's what it is. And then being able to inspire the youth.
Vicky or Patty?
Well,
Yeah.
for me, the most exciting part of the air show, honestly, is meeting the little kids. Just,
There you go. Inspiring the little ones.
oh my gosh, they're just so cute, and the parents bring them up to get autographs, and it's very humbling to get to interact with the kids. That's really special, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Patty?
Yeah, both of those things, but Anthony, I know exactly what you're talking about, but the box is yours and you're like, oh my God, I get to go rage around down low legally,
Absolutely.
It's just like, it's wild. It's really cool. And you're up there all alone in this little bubble, and there's thousands of people down there, but you can't hear them, or you can't, they're just a blur. And I think it's a Sam Lyons print of you've probably all have it too, but it's a Pitts. I think it's a Pitts looking down at the grass area, and there's a crowd over there, and it's like, this is what it's like to be coming into the box, and you're looking like, okay, that's where I'm going to line up, and there's where the wind's coming from, and it's like, yeah, it's like, that's the payoff. You do all this work for years, and then you get to go rage around for 10 minutes.
Yeah, and honestly,
That's the whole payoff,
Go ahead, Vicky.
I would have to say that if I got on stage in front of that many people, I would be like, oh my God. But when you're in your airplane, it's totally different.
Yeah.
It really is. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So listen, we actually have a viewer that has a question for you guys. He's a 150-hour private pilot with an instrument rating, also working on his tail wheel endorsement. And he is totally interested in aerobatics. So he wants to know, how do you bridge the gap financially for practicing and starting to learn it, to work your way towards doing that? He even mentioned, is it, he mentions cross country flying and things like that. But all out aerobatics is what he's interested in. So I'll let you guys take it away.
You just have to start somewhere.
Of scholarships available for learning aerobatics. Yeah. So
I didn't know that. Okay.
I think there's a Vicky Cruz scholarship, and Greg Cruz has a scholarship.
There's a few.
Search around, you can find some more. Just to at least get through the initial aerobatic instruction. And then I would say maybe go join a club, like maybe your local IAC chapter.
IAC stands for?
International Aerobatic Club. I mean, certainly if you want to get into aerobatics, you should join IAC and come and be among a bunch of like-minded pilots who can teach you how to do aerobatics safely, and critique you and help you move up the ladder. But there's perhaps, an aerobatic flight school nearby that, it's expensive, but you can work, right? I'm sure if there's a will, there's a way. So I'm sure there's some way to work out to make it happen.
Yeah. Anthony?
I don't know. I think Vicky hit it on the head. The scholarships, I think, what I'm trying to think about when I started and how I did it. I did have a job, but there was times where things were really tight. They offered like financing. So I was able to get a chunk of change and use that and finance that out to begin, aerobatic training and stuff like that. But I think getting, searching the web and finding those scholarships that are available, I think is the key. I think, it's free money, and it's allowing you to, pursue something that you're really passionate about. So I would second what Vicky said and go that route.
How much basic, and this is all to all three of you, how much basic aeronautical training, aerobatic training does it take before you're proficient enough to start, practicing regularly towards being a performer?
Well, it's a long road to being a performer, but to being an aerobatic pilot, just to be proficient, I've always had 10 hours minimum of dual instruction. And then you're probably safe enough to go and explore it on your own, in an aerobatic airplane, if you're up high and so on and so forth, and then build on it from there. But that's a minimum.
That's just to get you started.
Just to get you started, you need about 10 hours.
I have a question. I have a question too for you, Patty, just to kind of help clarify that for the people that are viewing. So when you say 10 hours, is that like, are we saying 30-minute blocks in those 10 hours?
No, 10 1-hour lessons.
Oh, 10 1-hour lessons. Okay.
Yeah. And the lessons are more than aerobatics. I mean, it's good airmanship, making sure you can, fly with wings level and use the rudder properly, and, can recover from upsets and, spins, that type of thing. And then the basic aerobatics, loops, rolls, half Cuban-8s, and a few of those maneuvers, just the real basic. That's what we recommend. That's what I did. I took a 10-hour course. And, to answer that young man's question, I guess it was a young man, but you don't have to pay for it all at once. You can take a lesson and go back, and you don't want to spread out the lessons too far, but same with all of aviation, it doesn't have to be paid for in advance. So, you can work and pay for a lesson. A lot of people do that, and then go the next week, do another one, and so on and so forth.
So you said it's a long road. So if somebody really is interested in it, how much flying do they need to do for how long? And I know it varies per person, per circumstance, per aircraft, et cetera. But in generally speaking, how long does it take before somebody can, really start looking at trying to perform our opportunities to perform in an air show?
Well, everybody's different. Part of it depends on your support system. We all have really people that are in this have to have strong support systems from their families, their parents, their community, like the IAC, like Vicki said. If you have a really strong support system and you have some mentors, people helping you, it will take you less time. But I mean, you need several hundred hours at least of pretty strong aerobatic background, I'd say.
So you need to be pretty determined.
Well, you have to be 100%. You can't go up and wonder if you're going to be able to complete the maneuver in front of a crowd of people. If you have a routine, you have to learn how to do it. And, the best way to do it is by competing. Well, yeah, you have to be incredibly determined. I mean, plus you can't have any guesswork. You're bringing things down lower so people can see you.
Right.
And everything has to be 100%. There can't be any guesswork, like, oh, maybe I'll be able to complete that loop or not fall out of it. There's just no room for that.
Right. Well, I think the commitment I'm talking about and the support that you're talking about is that if you decide you want to go this route, you're all in, and that takes up a lot of your time and energy and effort to be all in and become the type of performers that you guys are.
Yeah. Again, you have to be around like-minded people. And we all started with competition flying. So that's really important. People ask me, why did you move to St. Augustine, Florida? And I'm like, because I was out in the desert, and at the time living in the desert, and there was nobody around at that time to go and practice with or be around, or other airshow people. And I said, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to continue to be an airshow pilot and do this full time, I have to be in a community where there's an aerobatic box. I have to be around other airshow people. I have to be, I have to somehow have a support system around me, because doing it alone in a vacuum is not really safe. I need to know what's going on with other people when they have problems. I need to know how they fixed it or what they did. How did they get in trouble? How can I avoid that kind of thing? But it's really important to be in a community. And I had stopped competing at that time, so I wasn't at competitions all the time. Does that make sense? I'm sure everybody has that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
It's not something you can just do alone in a vacuum.
You need to have other eyes on you, right?
All the time. You have to be critiqued. You have to have.
So I think just to look at it, at a basic level, maybe you start out in IAC competitions, you do primary one year, sportsman the next year, intermediate the next year,
And work your way up.
That's like 4 years, right? Then maybe you start doing some air shows.
That's great.
The next year you go into unlimited, and then the first year you start air shows, you're at 800 feet. The next year you start air shows, you're at presuming you get enough shows, you're at 500, and then 250, and then the surface. So now you're talking about like a minimum of probably 8 years, and probably more than that to actually get to where you're a surface level performer. And you're barely a surface level performer.
And that's the point I was trying to bring up. It's very specialized, and it takes a long time, as you said, Patty, and as you're really laying out, Vicki, it takes some time to work your way through.
It's the PhD of flying, right? I mean, really.
Yeah.
No particular tie-in with you, right? No, just kidding. No, it sounds like it is, and that's the reason that one of the reasons I wanted to have you guys on is to let people know what air show flying and aerobatics flying as an aerobatic performer is really all about, what it really takes to do it in terms of the commitment, the time, the support factor, and things like that. So that's I appreciate the explanation on that.
Yeah, and it's sort of even beyond that, because it's not just, I mean, it's about safety and,
yes,
and killing yourself doing it. So there are no shortcuts. You have to put in the work.
So I want to squeeze in one other question real quick before we start to kind of wrap things up. This question we already kind of touched on a little bit, Patty, you did earlier. The young man is asking about flying aerobatics as an aerobatic performer, but also being an airline pilot. And I think you mentioned that you knew some airline pilots that also do aerobatics. I don't know if you meant that they also perform.
Yeah, lots of performers are airline pilots. We all know a lot of airline pilots in this business. It's a great opportunity for them because they get a lot of time off. They can pick and choose their schedule. In fact, a lot of the really top performers have airline jobs, and some of them, I think, stay co-pilot longer because they can control their schedule
better.
Yeah, so it's airlines great way to do it.
It's a great compliment too, because you learn the upset recovery in aerobatics, right? You learn all the window of flying an airplane, and not all airline pilots get that in their airline training. So
yeah,
and it's more fun.
Entry skill.
Yeah.
In the sense that when you're flying an airline, you're pretty much pushing buttons and going to altitude, et cetera, versus what you guys do, as you say, Patty, in the box.
Yeah, so it is a great compliment to it too. And if something happens up there on an airline and I'm in the back, I want to know there's an airshow pilot up there.
Well said, Patty. I like that. You want to know somebody knows what they're doing. If
yeah, or at least it's taking aerobatic lessons.
Well, so as we wrap up, I'd just like to ask each one of you to give a little bit of advice as to closing advice on your industry and what you guys do and what you recommend to the aspiring aviators that are watching. I'll go ahead and start with you, Anthony.
I think that aviation is a beautiful arena to be a part of. The people that are in the aviation community are there to support and help. And we're here to give information. And I think for all those who are aspiring to be an aerobatic pilot, airshow pilot, or just get your PPL, private pilot's license, don't stop. Keep going, because aviation has done wonderful things for us, and it could do wonderful things for you.
Well said. Vicki? Oh, I would just have to say that, pursue your dreams. If that's something that interests you, by all means, don't give up on it. And, it's not an easy road, but persevere and work through all the obstacles and you'll get there. So I would just say, don't give up on your dreams.
And Patty, take us home.
I agree with everything that Anthony and Vicki said, and aviation's given me so many opportunities in life. Really everything, the travel that I've been able to do and the places I've been and the things I've seen, the people I've met, it's totally worth it. It's been really, in some ways, it's very, very brutally hard and expensive and, all of those things. There's nothing really easy about it, but the payoff is worth it.
Well, I really appreciate you guys' candor and insight on what I think is really a neat thing. I mean, just watching the kind of performing that all of you've done. Anthony, unfortunately, haven't had a chance to see your performance yet, but I've seen the video, so I know you do some great things as well. But it's really great to have you guys as part of the show today, All Things Aviation and Aerospace, and you've given some really great pointers about, if you want to get into this is what it takes, including emphasizing all of the things that are important, such as support, perseverance, safety, and the like. So thank you very much, Anthony Oshinuga, Vicky Benzing, and of course, Patty Wagstaff. So appreciate you guys being with us. You guys take care of yourself and safe flying.
For having
Thanks,
us, Vince.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Vince Mickens with All Things Aviation and Aerospace, a presentation of Private Air Media Group. And I thank you for watching and look forward to seeing you all next week. Everybody take care. Thanks.